What's up, guys? It's G here, and welcome back to the Grizzly Life podcast. In today's episode, Colton dives into the key takeaways from two books he recently finished. This episode is similar to the last one, but today he's covering Shut Up and Listen by Tillman Fertitta and Never Lose a Customer Again by Joey Coleman. New episodes drop every Tuesday and Thursday, so make sure to subscribe, follow, and turn on notifications. Now let's get into episode 18 of the Grizzly Life podcast.
Yo, what is up, guys? It is Colton here. It is Monday morning. We've got a podcast we've got to get recorded today for tomorrow's release. Usually as of recent, we're trying to record these podcasts the Friday before they release. So we should have recorded these last week Friday, but we were up north on Friday. Me and my brother were actually coming home from a little install up there. So just didn't get to record, and then just kind of the weekend got away from us. So we're recording this week, Monday morning, to get her done. Episode 18 of many is what we are on. Today's probably going to be a shorter episode. I don't have Chase with me here. I'm just going to go over some notes that I've got from a book that I recently finished, actually yesterday, and a couple of little side pieces as well. If this is your first time tuning in, go back and listen to episodes 1 through 4. It talks all about where we began, how it all started from 2016 to now. If you have not tuned in yet as well, my name's Colton Burt. I am 26 years old. We've got some Grizzly Fitness locations, 6 total, a couple pieces of real estate, and another company called Priority Fitness, which we kind of talk about in every episode. So those of you that did tune into last episode, I got some good feedback on that. I did go over 2 books that I recently finished, I believe last week or the week before. One of them was called Breath, and one of them was called Why We Sleep. It was called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. So that was an interesting episode, kind of gave you some insight on how to breathe better, how to sleep better, that kind of stuff. I recommend both of those books, as those are 2 things that we do each and every day, and it's something that we can become better at. So when I do read a lot of different kinds of books. I read autobiographies, I read self-help or self-development, books on creating better habits and that kind of stuff. And then I also read a lot of business books, management books, that kind of stuff to be the best leader that I can be as well. But I am trying to share some good bits of advice from each of these books that I read that everybody can utilize. I know if I just hound leadership and business ownership and all of these things on this episode or on this podcast in general, it's not really going to be for everyone. So I'm going to do my best to take things away from the books that I do read that I think you can apply to kind of your everyday life. That being said, I recently read a book by Tillman Fertitta. It's called Shut Up and Listen. For those of you who do not know who he is the owner of Landry's. He is the owner of the Houston Rockets. He has a $10.7 billion net worth, according to the Forbes list. It is a very quick read. It's about 160 pages, 150 pages, something like that. So it reads quick, but it just kind of dives deep into business lessons that, again, you can kind of apply if you're the owner of a business, if you're part of a team, if you are looking to start a business someday. Some of these things that he talks about are just good for kind of like general day-to-day leadership and how to, kind of function and that kind of stuff. So the first takeaway that I liked that I can apply to our business and apply to our leadership and our staff is called the 95-5 rule. What this means is out of the 100% of things that we do every day, 95% of the things our business can do. We'll use Grizzly Fitness, for example. Our staff shows up on time, we're getting things done, we do our data reports, we do our key fob reports, we do all of our day-to-day things are going well and efficient, and that's kind of like the 95%. Those are the things that I don't really have to touch base on for the team. I just know that it's going to happen, it's going to be good, and we're going to have a pretty good schedule and routine to that. This would just be like literally anything, the driveway is getting plowed because we've got that outsourced, the lawn's going to get mowed, the gym towels are going to be washed, the spray bottles are going to be filled, the equipment's going to be cleaned, the place is going to be vacuumed, whatever. That's kind of your 95%. The things that are going to be done, you don't really have to like coach on it or continue talking about it. I won't say not coach on it. Sometimes those things can always be done better, but those are the things that are going to happen every day. The 5% of this rule is in regards to the things that we don't necessarily see or do. For example, if I walk in and there's garbage laying around, or if there's more like if there's wrappers in the parking lot. What do the customers see that we're not thinking about? So from when the customer pulls into our parking lot, to parks the car, to gets out of their car, to walks over to the sidewalk, to then walk into the first doors and the second doors, and what is the things that they're seeing that we're not thinking about? Because oftentimes those are the things that are overlooked. Are there candy wrappers? Our gyms, we usually have lifesavers. So is there lifesaver wrappers all over the parking lot or right inside the first double doors or on the bathroom floor, whatever it may be? Do we see a bunch of potholes in our parking lot, right? Like things like that just give our not our franchise, but our business a bad look. That's kind of what the 5% is. So the 95% of the things are the things that are just going to happen regardless. The 5% are the things that are often overlooked or things that we're not thinking about. The little items there, So keep that in mind when you're doing it. A lot of his examples were regarding like the restaurant business. In the restaurant business, he likes to, everything has to be right. Bringing a napkin with the drink, or, the way the food's displayed, the way like the forks and knives and this and that. Just like all these little things that need to be perfect in his eyes that maybe not everybody always sees or thinks about. So he kind of had an interesting little thing in the book too. He goes, I can see, I don't know how he said it, but basically he can see the light post that goes up 40,000 feet, and he can see the light bulb that's burnt out that high, right? So it's something that people don't really look for, similar to like if we walk in the gym and there's the foam rollers are laying around or the dumbbells are not perfectly straight or whatever it may be. It's like just having that owner's perspective or that customer's perspective of what they see and not, what we're looking at every day. So I'm rambling there, but the 95-5 rule is interesting to think about. It's good to get in the habit of that 5%. It's good for me to coach my team on that 5%. Not just think the same stuff day in and day out. Let's think about kind of that stuff that we don't see. He also had a saying, there are no spare customers. I like this mentality. In the gym business, it's interesting because, we're a 24/7 facility. People come and go. The retention aspect isn't always the easiest, and that's something that we could definitely work on as well. I'm sure every gym out there could work on the retention aspect. So the no spare customers mentality is interesting. He cares about every customer that comes through his door. We shouldn't be thinking about there's always another customer. Don't worry about this one. Like the overall goal is the hospitality that's displayed in these businesses, making people feel welcome, making people feel like, they got what they paid for, making sure they want to come back another time. The gym industry is a little different with like the retention process and it just being like a 24/7 service, come and go as you please. I see a lot of our gym members, leave due to moving away from our area or whatever that may be, but just having the mentality of no spare customers, treating everyone with respect and making the customer feel heard, making them feel comfortable, all that kind of stuff. Another one of his sayings was change, 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 and that's regarding to technology and with the times. It's interesting. He bought, I believe it was Morton's Steakhouse, which was like old school steakhouse joint. They didn't really keep up with the times. Their technology lagged. Their outfits, they still had to wear bow ties and tuxes and all this stuff. At least that's the way he described it. Obviously, where we're at, I'm not familiar with Morton's Steakhouse, but he brought the chain. I think it was like 100 and some locations or 97 locations. He said were like losing money every month, and so he came in there, renovated it, gave it the paint job, all that kind of stuff. So his aspect there was just to keep with the times, be flexible, be willing to change, color schemes, layouts, sound systems, all that kind of stuff. The technology you can use for your customers to keep it as simple as possible. Checking out at restaurants and that kind of stuff, getting receipts. So he also had the mentality of take no out of your vocabulary. And so his example was you go to a restaurant and it's like 11:07 in the morning. Breakfast ended at 11. You just want some scrambled eggs. Most times the server's just going to say, no, sorry, the grill, we don't make breakfast past 11. Which I never really understand either because I feel like eggs are one of the easiest things to make. His mentality being he owns hundreds of restaurants and hotels and he owns a couple casinos as well. his mentality was to never say no, that you could always figure it out. So you might get upcharged for having to cook the eggs or the bacon now, but I think he said some statistic of 80% of people just want what they want type thing in that situation. So it's absurd to hear how many. It's something so simple, a couple scrambled eggs, whatever. They just say no. They're not willing to say we can do this or that. Like he was trying to explain to have the mentality of don't say no, say what you can do. Use like the psychology aspect, make sure the customer feels heard. If you truly can't make it, say we can't do this, but we can do that. Come up with a resolution, try to help, and just have that aspect or that mindset when kind of talking to individuals as well. He also liked to say, I fear nothing, but I worry about everything. It's kind of just an interesting little statement he had there. He worries about everything in the sense of like, that's kind of like the change mindset and the recessions and that kind of stuff. You always have to be ready to adapt and, adversity and that kind of stuff. Just being willing to go with the flow and just know that he also said there's always a paddle for your ass. Basically, there's always something looking out to kind of come and get you. So whether that's a person, whether that be a lawsuit, a competitor, whatever it may be, he fears nothing, but he worries about everything is kind of his mindset there. So that was kind of a little wrap on the Tillman Fertitta book, Shut Up and Listen. It's a good little book, quick read. Like I said, the 95-5 rule is kind of what I took away from it the most for our business and what we need to do, but a lot of good stuff in that book. I also had some other notes kind of written down that I wanted to talk about. This is kind of just for you as an individual and kind of for your mindset and just thinking about it. But when you think about, getting opinions from individuals, I'm very big on asking people what they think and what's their point of view and that kind of stuff. Even if I don't necessarily want to use what their point of view is, I need to understand where everybody's coming from. I need to have a very good idea of how I should go about this. So before I make any major decision, before I purchase a building, before we open a new location, before, we buy this gym out or whatever it is, I'm asking for opinions and I want to know how we should go about this, how we should handle it. Same thing with customer disputes or issues. If a customer wants a refund for this or that, before we respond, before we handle it, if I have to deal with it, I try and get as many opinions as possible from the necessary people. And that's kind of where I'm going with this. So when you get opinions from people, you need to realize who you're asking and what you're asking and that kind of stuff, how you're phrasing it. If you want like one-sided opinions and you only ask, your mom, your girlfriend, and your sister about your boyfriend that you really don't like or whatever, those three people have probably heard the most stuff about you and your boyfriend getting in an argument, getting in a, whatever kind of issues you and your boyfriend may have. Obviously, this goes all ways, but if you're going to just ask the people that you constantly kind of talking to about that kind of stuff, you're probably going to get the answer that you want. And maybe a relationship isn't the best way to kind of talk about this, but the direction that I want to go is if you're going to ask an opinion of someone, make sure that's somebody you value their opinion and you want that opinion from that person. And they kind of have the saying is when you're talking about business, I want to get opinions from people who have done it, who have gone through it, who have done way more than I have way more success than, more success than I can even fathom or that I have personally or whatever that may be. So when you're trying to get your opinions, try to get it from people who have gone through what you've gone through, at least in the business aspect or in the life aspect. Maybe somebody who's had a job a lot longer than you, whatever that may be. Just think about kind of who you're asking, why you're asking that individual, what you're looking to get from that individual. When I make all of my team decisions, I ask the people on my team that I feel like can give me the most valid response as far as to they have experience with this or this is going to directly reflect on them as an individual too from the decision that I make. So just keep that in mind. Think about who you're asking your opinions from, who you're asking your questions, who you're getting your opinions from and that kind of stuff. But kind of the other side to this is, I always think sometimes the less people know, the better. Not everybody needs to be in your business. Not everybody needs to give an opinion. Not everybody has your best interest in their mind. A lot of the times people have a selfish opinion. So just think about that before you kind of open your mouth and start talking about whatever you're looking to get insight on. A little note that I had written down too. The more info you share with others regarding business, relationship, whatever it may be, the more opinion you'll get from others. So again, just be careful who you want to know things, what you want to get back, and that kind of stuff. So I'll kind of leave that there. But before we wrap up, I actually read another book last week. Let me pull this up here real quick. It was by Joey Coleman, Never Lose a Customer Again. And this kind of goes hand in hand with kind of some of the stuff I was just talking about in the previous book I read. I'm not going to dive too deep into this one. Again, a lot of this is about customer retention. What's interesting about this is I actually am going to meet this guy when I'm out in North Carolina in a couple weeks. So I'm excited for that. So that's kind of why I read this book, so I could understand who he is and kind of where he's coming from and what he likes to teach. But the interesting thing was the first 100 days is kind of the most important part of a customer relationship with the business. And so we're reading this as gym owners and kind of trying to understand how to retain gym members and customers and keep them happy and keep them intrigued and all that kind of stuff. So the first 100 days is kind of the biggest. I forget what the statistic was, but it was some super high statistic of individuals will leave within the first 100 days. They'll cancel their membership. They'll go elsewhere. They'll whatever. So the base of this book was figuring out how to take the client from not purchasing a product to being a raving fan, right? And every step in between there. He says there's 8 phases of the customer experience. That being said, they are assess, admit, affirm, activate, acclimate, accomplish, adopt, and advocate. I'm not going to dive into those, but it was a very interesting read to kind of understand how somebody goes from a cold customer and not knowing anything about you or your business to, again, becoming the raving fan. We're all fans about something, whether it's a brand like Under Armour or Nike, maybe a Cabela's, maybe Victoria's Secret, I don't know. Whatever it is, we're all raving fans for another, for a brand or 2 or 3, whether we're outdoors or indoors or whatever it is, Apple, Samsung, that kind of stuff. We're all raving fans about something. So a lot of the book is just talking about how to go and get to that aspect and get people talking about you and help with the word of mouth. He also likes to think of the human-to-human approach instead of like business to business or business to customer. Everything's human to human. Again, customer service, customer experience. He also likes to use the customer experience mindset versus the customer service. Customer service is for solving problems and issues. Customer experience is the customer experience, what they're experiencing during their time. So the interactions at the front desk when they walk into the gym, the follow-up saying, hey, we've seen you've been around, you've been here for a week, you've been here for a month. We've noticed you've checked into the gym 20 times. We noticed you're getting results, all that kind of stuff. That's the customer experience. And it's kind of more of the proactive approach, right? Customer service is the issues. Customer experience is the experience you get when you go and dine in at Texas Roadhouse or a fast food joint or whatever it is. That's the customer experience. And having that mindset, I think, is a good thing to think about as well for our team. So that's why I'm talking about it here. I don't know that I'm going to dive too much more into that book. It goes very deep into, like I said, the 8 phases. That's basically the entire makeup of the book, but it is a good read if you're in that line of business or if you have to think about, even if you're not a business owner, but if you're in like a customer service role or a marketing role or any kind of management role, anything that you have to deal with customers, I think it's a good read. I think it's important to understand how the customer feels in each of those phases and how to keep them intrigued longer and that kind of stuff. So Joey Coleman, Never Lose a Customer Again. That is the second most recent book I've finished as well. Today was kind of an episode we just threw together. I know I feel like I'm all over the place. Maybe I'm not. You guys can give me your honest feedback. That's all good with me. Again, this is practice. I am trying to work on the flow of this, the understanding of podcasts, how to speak. We are going to work on getting the camera set up here. We're actually working on building out a little podcast area near our Watoma gym in one of the vacant spots that we've got over there. So that will be exciting. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we've kind of got a little, maybe a semi-permanent home set up for the podcast studio. Then we can get the film running. We can go into our interviews with, Kyle and Nolan and Gavino, Ellie, a lot of our early on staff that has been here for the whole ride so far. I know that will be very exciting and people will be interested to hear those stories. Those will be longer episodes, so I'm excited to get into that. That's all I've got for you guys today. We appreciate you guys tuning in. We will be recording another episode here tomorrow or Wednesday for Thursday's episode. I believe we should have Chase on for that one, so we'll go back and forth. If there's anything you guys want to hear, let me know ASAP so Chase and I can talk about it. If you want to follow me on Snapchat, Colton.Burt, COLTON.BURT. Instagram, Facebook is ColtonBurt19. Add me on there. Shoot me any questions. If you want to talk nutrition, business, if you got a business idea, if you want something you need input on, if you want a good opinion from somebody from the outside that doesn't know you very well, I'm the guy. I can give you an honest opinion. I would love to help you out in any way that I can. So we appreciate you guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next episode.